Hello everyone, I'm Illumineer Greg.
And I'm Illumineer Franz.
And welcome to the Tavern, or Lorcana fan channel for all things about the Disney Lorcana trading card game.
For our very first video, we'll be ranking all of the currently revealed D23 promotional cards. Of course, not all details have been shown about the game just yet, so we have to make a certain amount of assumptions about how the game works. So here they are. Assumption 1. The top left number is a cost. The cost will be paid with an in-game resource. Number 2. The two numbers in the middle of the card are attack and defense signified by the star and shield icons. Number 3. A glimmer is a card with the aforementioned attack and defense symbols. Number 4. To challenge is to engage in combat with another glimmer or your opponent. Number 5. Exert is to turn the card sideways. Number 6. When a card is exerted, it cannot challenge. Number 7. The symbol and color below the name is the card's element. Number 8. There will be different sections of the turn called phases. There will only be one phase during a turn where you can attack. You can't play cards normally during this phase. Number 9. Health is set at 20. When one player's health hits 0, that player loses and the other player wins the game. Number 10. You can challenge your opponent or a glimmer at any time during the battle phase. Number 11. You can only challenge exerted glimmers. Number 12. If power exceeds/equals shield, the defending glimmer is discarded. Exerted glimmers don't deal combat damage when being challenged. 13. A glimmer cannot challenge the first turn that it is played.
Resource assumption number 1, Hearthstone. In this system, you gain 1 play point each turn. These play points can be expended to pay for the cost of cards. At the start of each turn, you regain the ability to spend these resources. For example, I begin the game. Since it is turn 1, I gain 1 play point. Pretty sweet. With this point, I can play Forceful Duelist, Captain Hook. Since he only costs 1 play point, I can do nothing else for the turn, as I have expended my resources. On the following turn, my play point replenishes, and I get access to a second. Now equipped with 2 of them, I can play Miserable as Usual, Cruella de Vil. This pattern continues until I receive up to 10 play points, where then I can no longer receive any additional play points for the rest of the game. They will still replenish like normal. Alright, and here we are with the first Lorcana tier list that we're going to do. This one is assuming the Hearthstone mana system, so you get 1 mana every single turn, and it goes up to 10, and they're repeatable. So we're going to start off with perhaps what we think is the best card for this mana system, Captain Hook. So Captain Hook is a 1 cost with 1 attack, 2 defense, and he has the challenger keyword here. And when he challenges, the character gets +2 power. So effectively a 1 mana, 3 attack, 2 defense. For those who have played Hearthstone before, this is equivalent to Flame Imp, basically. Incredibly great card. He's an easy S tier for me.
Yeah, there. I don't think there was any doubt about this card from either of us. Hearthstone is the game that I've played the most out of all of these mana systems, and playing a lot of decks that included that Flame Imp. This card would be insane in the system, mostly because it doesn't have a drawback where Flame Imp dealt you 2 damage. Captain Hook, being essentially a 1 mana with 5 stats worth of attack and defense is just pretty crazy, and it trades favorably into about half of the other cards that are revealed so far. And as a 1 cost, that is just insane to play on curve in a Hearthstone system.
Perfect. And just to kind of elaborate to maybe some of our viewers who have played less card games in their life. So curve is a concept we talk about when it comes to playing cards on your turn and during times where it's like appropriate. So for example, you start with 1 mana. If you play a card that costs 1 mana, you're playing on curve. Same that happens if on the second turn you play a card with 2 costs and then 3 costs, so on and so forth. One thing that's kind of interesting about this card, and this goes a little bit more into TCG theory and seeing how cards get evaluated, but like you said, 3 stats in total for 1 mana worth of cards. The fact that the extra 2 power in Hook is locked behind a second effect leads you to believe that 2 attack, 2 defense is the standard, maybe even less. but probably the standard for 1-cost cards in this game. So Hook by himself actually gives us more insight into what other cards in the future may actually look like if a 3/2 is considered an effect. Like you have to challenge in order to get that power. So that's something to think about in the future for sure.
Another thing I'd like to bring up is this is one of the only direct keywords that we have here besides shift and evasive. This shows that there will be a pretty heavy focus on abilities that happen when you challenge into other things or another character.
Perfect. All right, and I think that concludes our discussion of Hook, but he'll be back in similar tier placements for the other resource systems. Sweet. Do you want to take us away with Stitch?
Yeah, so for the second card that we have up in S tier, we have Stitch the Rockstar, and my god, this card reads... Like, if you've played any sort of TCG before, you know that drawing cards are generally very, very, very good, unless you play the Pokemon TCG. But this card, it has everything. Like, it draws cards when you play lower costed cards, and it can be cheated out for a lower cost. So this card reads essentially as a 4 mana with 8 worth of stats, and I think that is probably the best stat per cost that we have here, just in these cards. And that obviously assumes another Stitch. And coming from other card games, I would believe that Stitches are probably going to be costed at somewhere between that 2 and 4 mana range, just to make sure that you aren't playing Stitch for overall much less than the intended cost of 6 by playing one either on the same turn or a turn before. But again, being in Hearthstone systems, being able to cheat a higher cost card out earlier on an earlier turn usually starts to set up a board for a steamroll with the amount of stats that are on the board. And this card especially does that because you get more cards on the field that draw you extra cards.
Mm-hmm. So I have no disagreement with anything that was just said. Here's something interesting though. So this card draws you more cards. Basically, whenever you play Glimmer with cost 2 or less, you can exert it to draw a card, which is of course tapping. With that whole long list of assumptions we dropped to you viewers at the beginning of this video, you can attack or you can challenge glimmers that are already exerted. And so that actually gives you an easier way as the opponent to deal with the cards that are played. But even then, just the fact that you're adding more cards to the board and you're not actually losing any card advantage, like you still have that card to your pool of resources because you're replenishing your hand. Even if exerted cards are very easy to deal with in Lorcana, there's just nothing wrong with having a cycle and just the ability to be able to play this card for cheaper if you've already played a Stitch. I'm just really looking forward to seeing what the other Stitch cards in the game do. This card is, might just be an archetype, a card that would define an archetype in this game. But of course, only time will tell when it comes to that. But
really,
another easy S tier, I think we'd say.
Definitely, really, the one real boss unit that we've seen in these cards, the others feel fairly standalone for the most part, but this feels like an actual build around of a deck.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right, and so that's going to be those 2 cards. We're going to move on to our third card here, and this is going to be the Elsa card. Elsa Snow Queen, 3 costs, 2 attack, 3 defense, has an ability called Freeze. And basically what happens is that there's a symbol on her that we assume to be exert, which is resting the character, turning it sideways, and then you get to exert a chosen opposing character. And again, going back to our long list of assumptions, which so sorry for having to dump all those on you. It's just super important to get those out of the way first. If you, first of all, you can tack into exerted characters, and also Elsa can't really do this ability the first turn she's played. So we're assuming that those 2 things are true. We can attack into cards that are turned sideways, and we have to wait a turn to turn herself sideways. Even still, with all of those assumptions that would make this card seem a little bit less than desirable, within the Hearthstone context, within the Hearthstone mana system, I believe she's an easy A, because it makes it really easy to kind of control and deal with opponents' cards on a case-by-case basis. And again, that concept of curve, to be able to play this card on turn 3, have it sit there, and then have your Captain Hook or something that you played early in the game take out an opposing glimmer that you otherwise would not have been able to deal with at all, really makes Elsa a great card.
I definitely agree. And I think really the one thing that held this card back from being an S tier card would be the cost. So huge emphasis in games like Hearthstone and with this mana system is early pressure or early board control. And Elsa has a very good stat line, 2-3 early on. This is really a must-answer card for your opponent in the early game, or else things are going to start to really stack up advantage-wise in your behavior, in your favor overall. Being able to have a high defense unit that can also, assuming that you can only attack rested or exerted glimmers, being able to exert another glimmer on command while being a body that sits on field and either swings for two every turn or forces the opponent to use more cards to take it off the field. It's a very versatile card in this assumption. I
hate to be the one to bring this up, but would you say it's fair to say that this card snowballs?
Ooh.
Oh,
got him. Oh, man.
If this is still in the final video, I'm sorry, viewers. My bad. I won't do it again. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with everything here. In Magic, we have this idea of like cards that are kill on sight. Like as soon as the card hits the board, we want to get rid of it. I wouldn't necessarily say that Elsa is right there, but if this card, again, forgive the pun, if the card snowballs and is able to take out multiple cards for one cards with a value, that is effectively a 2-for-1, 3-for-1. It just scales each turn it's on the board and it's not dealt with. So Elsa's going to be a really good card, especially within the context of the Hearthstone.
You did it, so I'll do it. So very much so. We do not recommend you letting this card go on the field for very long.
Yeah, 100%. Sweet. And then we got Mickey.
Now, Mickey is a very interesting card to look at in terms of viability for me. It's a very vanilla card, and abilities like this, Mickey is an 8-costed Glimmer that is a 5/5 in terms of stats with the keyword evasive, which means only other characters with evasive can challenge this character. So if you played Magic, flying is very similar to this. For Hearthstone, in the context that we're using, stealth is very similar to this as well, although not the exact same. Now, we both like this card, I would say, but in this system, I think we both think that it is a little bit too high costed for what we're seeing in this overall in the design of this card game, especially with the assumption that we're using 20 health. We both think the game is going to be well on its way to being over by the time that this
That is 7 challenges with Hook, by the way.
Yeah.
If Hook stays on board for 7 turns, which probably isn't very likely, the game is over.
Exactly. So like we both think like this card has a very powerful effect with a very big and very interesting stat line. However, we just think that the cost is a little bit too much for it to be super impactful during most games.
Excellent. So you're thinking C tier for this one?
Yeah, I'm thinking C tier.
Excellent. All right. I think that sounds great for me. And we're going to go into the next card, Robin Hood, Unrivaled Archer. 6 cost, 4 attack, 4 defense. It has 2 abilities, which is interesting. I think this is the only card that has 2 abilities, or aside from the Stitch that we talked about earlier. Feed the Poor. When you play this character, if an opponent has more cards than you usually get to draw a card. Interesting wording and opponent. Leads me to believe that there might be some multiplayer game mode within Lorcana, which will be really interesting to see, but it's beyond the scope of this specific video. So basically, you get an extra card. You don't have to. Basically, Robin Hood replaces himself if you meet the condition. And then Good Shot. During your turn, this character has evasive, and they can challenge characters with evasive. Basically, it's evasive, but only one-sided. So that actually might change our evaluation of this card a little bit. In Hearthstone, it's a little bit more difficult to evaluate this card. Again, 6 cost is very high. Game is soon to be over. That type of thing. Stitch gets a pass for being that same cost because you can basically combine the costs, right? So you can play a Stitch earlier and then actually play Stitch for 4, which makes it a lot more favorable in this type of system.
And I will say, Stitch seems to be slightly nerfed in terms of offensive capability just because of that. So dropping a Stitch early doesn't automatically snowball. Sorry to keep using it. Snowball your opponent out of the game with a 4 attack. Like six mana minion, which I think is a very good credit to the design team already.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So we both agree that something within the Hearthstone system is holding Robin Hood back. The one thing being the high cost. 2, basically just like evasive at this point in the game. It kind of suffers the same Mickey problem, but to a lesser extent. Like Mickey swings harder. But Robin Hood is just kind of this weird middle ground where it's like, okay, well, it's only evasive half the time, and a lot of times this draw is going to be pretty conditional, because especially in Hearthstone, a lot of times you keep cards and you're trying to play on curve, so a lot of times, it's not going to be the case where, people are going to have more cards or maybe more aggro strategies, play a lot of cards, and then prevent you from getting the draw. So all those factors combined leads me to believe that Robin Hood would not be a very good card, again, with the Hearthstone assumption.
Yeah, I'll agree and put it in the C tier. And just to put it into some sort of context, the Hearthstone system is so predominantly curve based. And if you look at other cards on curve, like look at Captain Hook on curve, is a 1/2 that becomes a 3/2 when attacking. That is essentially a must answer, or your opponent may lose the game on the spot. Stitch even without its effect is a 6 mana with the same amount of stats as Robin Hood that draws cards every turn. So like that versus just having one-sided evasive during just your turn. Yeah, it replaces the card in hand, but there's a reason that there are a lot of draw spells in Hearthstone right now, and just having that extra card advantage isn't always that much worth having a mediocre on curve placement.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, so here's where maybe our assumptions have been wrong in some way, but we are very hard pressed to find a good use for Cruella de Vil, miserable as usual. It's a 2-costed, 1 attack, 3 defense Glimmer with the ability You'll Be Sorry. When this character is challenged and banished, you may return chosen character to their player's hand. Essentially, this means chosen character to their player's hand. It means it goes both ways. So basically, you can bounce your own card, which there is going to be very little reason you're going to want to do that, except for maybe in the fact that you exerted some glimmers with Stitch and you want to get them back before your opponent can kill them. Or you can get rid of one of their cards. The big thing is that with our current set of assumptions, you wouldn't really have any good reason to attack into Cruella de Vil unless you had to. So basically all Cruella de Vil is going to be doing each turn is accumulating 1 point of damage. And when we have that in direct comparison to a card that costs 1 less and a card that does 2 more damage per turn, Cruella de Vil, again, with our current set of assumptions, seems to be a very lackluster card.
And I totally agree. I'm choosing to believe right now that there is something that we're missing in our assumptions, which is totally fine. I hope so too, because this card, flavor-wise, is really cool to me. Just being able to bounce essentially any card on either your field or your opponent's field, either a must answer on your opponent's side of the field that you just you can't have on the field right now. Maybe a high costed attack Glimmer with a conditional effect that only activates when it's on the field. Whether you are building an on-place focus deck that you essentially want to keep up your advantage and stuff like that. Like this card can and probably will be doing very cool things, but inside the confines of our assumptions, this card just doesn't do enough, and there really just is no reason to attack into it right now. So we have this pretty low.
Yeah, so basically I think the one way that this card actually works is that if you challenge an opposing character and you can kill your own card that way, if that counts as being challenged, then maybe you can abuse some really good on-play effects. Like, for example, we'll have this card coming up called Maleficent that has a cool on-play effect. It's very high cost, unfortunately, but things like that allow you to do things when you play cards might be interesting within the design space for futurely revealed cards, but from our current understanding of how this game works and with our assumptions and the currently revealed cards, there is little to no reason to actually play Cruella de Vil, which is a shame.
Agreed.
All right, and I think that takes us a pretty good segue into our last card.
Our last card being the 9-costed, the highest costed card that we've seen today, the 9-costed Maleficent, the Monstrous Dragon, sitting at a 7 attack, 5 defense, with the ability Dragonfire. When you play this character, you may banish a chosen opposing character. Now, this effect, when you first look at it, it looks very, very, very good. Like you're removing anything. You can get rid of
Stitch.
Yeah, you can get rid of Stitch.
You can get rid of a Mickey.
You can get rid of Captain Hook. But then you,
at that point, it's too late. You're already dead.
Yeah, but then you look at it just a little bit closer and realize that you're spending 9 mana to kill off a 1 mana card. Now, this
and Hook already killed you,
and
he's been in he's been in play for 8 turns. Yeah.
So this card, I would also assume it falls similarly to Cruella de Vil, where there's going to be, there most likely will be the ability to ramp up mana. For those of you who don't know, ramping up mana, it just means cheating out mana early and essentially accelerating your clock on mana. Just being able to play this.
Playing Maleficent, that's 9-cost card for less than 9 mana through the means of other cards.
Yeah. And reading into this too, even at 9 mana, the 7/5, it doesn't really feel that impressive. It's already getting traded for by Mickey. It's almost getting traded for by Robin Hood. Heck, even Captain Hook does over half the health on Maleficent. It's just there are a lot of small issues I have with Maleficent that could be completely false, and this card can be extremely good, especially in a control based deck that. Especially in, I would like to go back to the Hearthstone reference, control warrior. Always love to play those big board clearing cards and control cards just to stall out games and stuff like that. And this could very well be one of those. Just at the moment, 9 cost is just extremely too much for such a small effect.
Yeah, I would at 9 costs, and especially considering Hearthstone mana system and all these. Of course, I feel like I sound like a broken record at this point, but with our assumptions, it's going to be 9 costs. The game might be over by that point, and of course, it might be the case that Lorcana is going for a more grindy, longer type of game, and in that longer game context, I can see Maleficent being playable, but not great. For 9 costs, I would really expect to hope to get a full 2 cards worth of value, being able to clear at least 2 cards on the board, but just doing a 1-for-1 in that specific way, it seems like too high of cost, a little bit too little too late, and that's basically all there is to say about Maleficent.
Yeah, and because this will be also putting this in the D tier right next to Cruella.
Alright, excellent. So this is going to be our tier list for the Hearthstone resource system assumption, and we'll catch you on the flip with the Duel Masters resource system, so we'll be right back. Resource assumption number 2, Duel Masters. In this resource system, once per turn, and at the start of it, you may play a card from your hand into your resource area and may exert it to reduce 1 resource of that card's color. Let's bring in our good old friend, Forceful Duelist Captain Hook, back in again to explain. I get to play first. I play a copy of Forceful Duelist Captain Hook from my hand into the resource area. Since Captain Hook is of the gray color, I may then exert that resource to be able to play a gray cost for another Forceful Duelist Captain Hook I have in my hand. At the beginning of my following turn, all cards in my resource area unexert themselves, and I'm allowed to add a second card to it. This time I will place a Miserable as Usual Cruella de Vil into my resource area. Since my second copy of Miserable as Usual Cruella de Vil is a green card, and costs 2, I must exert at least 1 green card and 1 other resource of any color to be able to play her. This process may be repeated each and every turn of the game. There is no cap to how many resources you can have, but be careful, as each time you commit a resource, you are also losing a card from your hand, which may end up being very useful in the rest of the game. So use your resources wisely. Alright, we are back at it again, and this time we're going to be taking a look at the Duel Masters resource system assumption And just to reiterate from basically the short the short video that you just watched, Duel Masters is the idea that a card from your hand or a glimmer from your hand is going to turn into a resource. So every single turn you go down in terms of the pool of cards that you have available to actually be able to use that resource to actually cast the rest of your cards. And so that actually has some interesting implications when it comes to how we actually evaluate these cards. And one card in particular, as a foreshadow, one card in particular we thought was one of the best is actually now going to be somewhat middling or not as great in this resource system. But without much surprise, we're going to take a look at our good old pal Stitch again, who is as good as ever, perhaps even better within the Duel Master system. And this is Stitch again. So a couple different reasons. One, in Duel Masters, every single time you commit a resource to your resource area, you're going to be losing a card in hand, and Stitch is going to be one of the easiest ways that you get those cards back. And so that's going to be a big one for me. And then of course Stitch, in terms of the cost, he's going to be pretty 4 mana earlier on in the game, and then as soon as you start committing those cards from the resource that you've already accumulated in your resource area, you're just going to be getting more and more cards. And that's really where the strength of Stitch lies in Duel Masters. Do you have any other things to add in terms of Stitch?
Yeah, I just want to I want to just emphasize how good this card is in this system. Like, just being able to put bodies on field in a format that's generally going to be more grindy. It doesn't matter that you're exhausting them and using them. You're digging through your deck more. And for a 4 cost like this over a regular Stitch, you're getting 8 stats worth of just stats in general. Like, and that is the best value on stats versus cost that we have in this particular scenario of Duel Masters. And oh my God, is this insane?
Yeah, no, I have no other things to add. This is just without a doubt. Like, if we could change this S tier to SSS tier, I 100% would. But unfortunately, we're not doing that today. So, all right, next card up, we have Robin Hood. Feel free to take it away.
Robin Hood, jumping up from a little bit of a middling card in the last assumption. Really here, a huge emphasis in the Duel Masters is the card advantage that you gain, especially for playing cards. So any card that's saying on place draw a card is already very good, but this card is especially going to go off a decent amount more in this format as opposed to others, is because your opponent is also utilizing multiple resources per turn, using a card from hand to gain their mana and then playing cards from hand as well. So you'll be able to play in a way where this card essentially is always drawing you a card. And the second effect, just like having that evasive to clean up mucky boards and still having a decent 8 worth of stats for the cost of 6 is just really good. It's a very, very solid card in this format, and I think you'll find yourself playing it a lot if this was the arrangement.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate, this is one thing I find really fascinating about this system is that Duel Masters specifies that you don't have to place a card into resource, it's just that you may. Mm-hmm. And so basically, if you're playing Robin Hood in your deck, you are going to commit that card to resource to get up to 6 anyway. But your opponent may be playing an aggro deck and doesn't need to get up that high. So just based on that differential alone, the fact that you're committing a resource every turn, your opponent may not necessarily be committing the resource, means that you're going to be getting that, you're going to be getting that more cards in hand that your opponent conditioned just fine. So he's more likely to going to be resolved there. And
exactly.
Of course, Robin Hood paves the way to more higher cost cards if you're going to be working that hard for it anyway. So just curves really well.
And I will mention that, like I said the last resource of Stitch being a build around card, in this specific assumption of Duel Masters, Robin Hood very well could also be a build around card of building a deck specifically to either ramp up mana or keep cards in hand afterwards and control the board until you just are able to put Robin Hood on the board, gain enough resources, and just flood the field with enough stats to really push your opponent out of the game.
Perfect. All right, and this is going to be a far cry from what we previously talked about, but Captain Hook is going to see his spot in B tier, so
Oh,
Let's
how
go
the
ahead and
mighty
explain
have
this.
fallen, right?
The mighty have fallen. Essentially, this kind of goes in with a general idea of the resource system again. You're going to be losing cards every single turn. Aggro decks are going to be a bit less good. You're going to need something like a Stitch to actually give you more cards than you otherwise would have, because not only, if you're playing this on curve turn 1, not only are you using a card for the resource, but you're also losing a card in terms of hook. And so if you're going to be committing a card for resource every single turn, you need to be playing cards anyway. Higher cost cards are going to be more incentivized in the Duel Master system, and Captain Hook, as we know, is a 1-cost card, the lowest cost that we've seen in terms of Lorcana, potentially in the whole entire game upon release. So just this card advantage thing, Duel Masters really incentivizes higher cost cards, and unfortunately, that's how the cookie crumbles when it comes to Captain Hook.
And he stays up in B because this is still a 1 mana flame imp 3/2. It's still very good for its cost and still trades very favorably. It's just losing that card advantage, going with -2 in hand just to play a 3/2. That's more in line with what flame imp was in Hearthstone of having that drawback there.
Perfect. All right, next card is going to be Elsa.
And yeah, Elsa, right back here in the pretty middle of the road here. A little bit worse than in Hearthstone, mostly because playing on curve and that middle of the game. We're not sure if this does enough. Especially because aggro is going to be less good. There are going to be less decks really flooding the field early.
Yeah, less targets for Elsa to actually freeze.
Exactly.
I never even thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So not having a lot of targets and the stats being fairly low for the cost, you're gonna see Elsa just be a little bit worse in this format than it was originally in the Hearthstone format.
For the record, I'm not sure how much modern Duel Masters has changed from this, but I know that Duel Masters early on, the first couple turns of that game would just be like play resource pass. Like both opponents, like both players know what they're getting themselves into, and that they're kind of in for a longer game, and that those first couple turns are really just to start committing yourself to resource. And so, I mean, essentially in a game where parity continues, where they're going to be the same resource from each sides of the field, you actually don't lose out on anything for not playing that early character. So that actually might be an argument for why, Hook may be a little bit better than what we're initially saying, but of course only time will tell, and of course only time will tell if the Duel Master systems will actually or something similar to it will actually get implemented. Sweet, so that is Elsa for you. And going to be in the next tier list here, so we're done with B tier for now. This is going to be Mickey again, our good old friend. 8 costs in Duel Masters, kind of yikes. You are negging 8 over the course of 8 turns to be able to commit Mickey to the board, and then assuming Summoning Sickness, which we have for all these cards, he's going to start dealing damage on turn 9. That is just way too late. But who knows, maybe the game goes long, but right now I'm not seeing it. Mickey, being a great attacker, unfortunately just comes out a little bit too late.
I mean, yeah, you said it. So like just waiting until turn 9 to do anything as a card just really is tough. Like you, especially like, I mean, you can draw into it early.
By that point, Robin Hood has already swung in twice.
Exactly.
And drawn a card. Yeah.
Like you can use this as resource if you draw it early, but if you're worried about drawing this early, like, I think it might be time to look at some other cards, my guy. Like, honestly.
Yeah, there we go with Mickey. And then, unfortunately, at the bottom of the barrel, as was the case with the last tier list, we're just going to round it off with Cruella de Vil and Maleficent. Not really getting much better. This system is not really doing them any more favors than what was previously said. Cruella de Vil just obviously being bad value all around, and Maleficent being too high costed, especially with the Duel Masters mana system problem.
And Maleficent, same vein as Mickey. It's waiting until turn 9 to do anything at all, and even then, like killing one thing, sure, but by that time, if you're spending 9 mana to kill one thing, you're not doing that much, especially because this waits until turn 10 to attack, and even then it only has 5 shields. So you could use this to go 1 for 1, and then your opponent could shove two 2 to 3 cards on the board their next turn, and that 1-for-1 kind of just looked pretty bad.
By that point, your opponent has already drawn 5 to 6 cards with Stitch and left.
Yeah,
and
just left the building. They already turned in their match slip.
They've turned in their match slip. Won the tournament easy. Maleficent, unfortunately, bottom of the barrel when it comes to these cards.
And Cruella in this system, my God, Cruella, for your sake, I hope that this is not the system, because I have to be honest. In this system, I think Cruella de Vil might be one of the worst cards I have ever read in any card game. This is not good, folks. You're necking yourself to put cards on the board, and using the ability to put your stuff back is not what you want to be doing in this kind of format, especially without many very good on places. Yeah, you have Robin Hood, but like, you used to have other Robin Hoods, and you can just draw the better cards. And especially if there is a situation where you have to use Cruella de Vil to bounce one of your opponent's cards in a Duel Master format, I feel so bad for you. Oh my God, you lost a unit and gave your opponent a card back in hand. Oh, yikes, bro. Because usually like that, a lot of those cards, like if Cruella died, like those units one of those units has already done their job. So if you bounce one of those units that has already done their job, you essentially just gave them a free card back to use as mana as the next turn. It's just, I don't want to spend too much more time ragging on Cruella de Vil because I really hope that we're wrong with these assumptions.
This is not going to be it. Yeah, and this is, kind of as just a side note, this is what's going to be so interesting. I'm very hyped to see what this game is actually going to be like, because like then we can actually, truly evaluate these cards. But even just as like a little thought experiment, seeing these different systems vastly changes where the card is actually positioned, right? Elsa as an A tier card goes down to B tier. Hook as an S tier card goes down to B tier. Like, this is really the Wild West in terms of Lorcana right now, just because there's a drought of news. Like, there's not a whole lot that we know about this game, but man, am I excited to really see how this game is.
I'm telling you, I wake up every day. I go to the Twitter, I go to the Discords, and I'm sniffing for any sort of information that I can find. Oh my God, I want more.
Yeah, next fall cannot come soon enough.
Exactly.
All right, so that's going to be it for our Duel Masters system. We'll see you in a couple more seconds with our admittedly more convoluted version of the Digimon memory system, so stay tuned for that. We're going to have a lot of more interesting things to say. All right, see you then. Resource assumption number 3, the Digimon memory gauge. In this system, your memory starts at 0. When a card gets played, the gauge shifts over by the card's cost. As soon as the gauge goes past 0, the current player's turn is over, and the other player's turn begins. What makes this interesting is that there's no real restriction to the cost of cards you can play in a turn. In the previous systems discussed, there was a limit to when and where you can play specific cards. But in this one, as long as it's your turn and your opponent won't exceed 10 memory from playing said card, you are free to play whatever. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, your opponent will be getting a lot more resources if you play high cost cards. Aside from the Digimon resource assumption, there is a second one. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. Do you see these stars shown at the bottom right of each card? In this version of the resource system, stars will also give a resource to the opponent. For example, if I challenge the opponent with my copy of Mickey Mouse, Brave Little Tailor, which has 4 stars printed on the bottom right, then their resource gauge will shift to the right by 4. The same memory logic as before still applies. If it goes past 0, then your turn is over. All right, and we are back with this last segment of this.
And I'm definitely going to preface this by saying that this last section, if you guys want something rational or that very well may happen, you can stop now. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share in the comments below. But
or tell us your own unique resource system that you want added. But
yeah, make sure to comment. Yeah, but this next one just very very likely is not it. This resource system was already sold to a different company.
Yeah, so more of this will come in a separate video that I'm working on, a Ryan Miller retrospective, who is listed as the co-designer of Lorcana trading card game. Basically, this is the Digimon memory gauge, or even before that, the Chrono Clash system, resource system. So basically, how it works, as explained previously, as soon as it goes past 0, the turn's over. But we have an added caveat here because it wasn't spicy enough as it is, the memory gauge being one of the best resource systems, in my opinion, from any trading card game. But not only that, but the stars on the bottom right of the card, which is probably just rarity. Like, I'm not going to lie to anyone, like, it's probably just rarity. But the stars, after you challenge a player or a character, you're giving the opponent that much of that resource in return. And because of that, our good old friend Captain Hook is back to his former glory as he was in Hearthstone system with triple S tier. Captain Hook, let's do it.
This card, just like how Stitch is one of the best cards I've ever read in DM, just like how Cruella was one of the worst cards I've ever read in DM, Captain Hook is quite possibly the best card I have ever read in any TCG comparatively to their memory system in Digimon, as a 1 cost for a 3/2 that also only gives 1 on attack. This is absolutely insane, guys.
It's crazy. So, quick history lesson for those who've never played Digimon. There's this card called Ice Ball, and basically it costs 1, same as Hook, and you'd very frequently pass the turn with it, leave your opponent on 1 memory or resource, and every single time they would swing, they lose 2 memory. Just being 1 cost in the Digimon memory system is very good because the turn doesn't end when you're at 0. The turn ends when the opponent gets a positive number. So Hook, assuming Summoning Sickness too, Hook you can play and choke your opponent and also have one of the best on-curve aggressive options that is potentially within the entire game, even beyond these 7 cards. Again, SSS tier, like we said with Stitch earlier. SSS tier if we could, but unfortunately we're not doing that this video. Maybe next time if you want SSS tier, let us know in the comments.
But yeah, so nothing else to say here. This card's insane. Nothing else stacks up to it. Moving on to the next tier.
All right, and then we got Stitch. He's still really good. A little bit less good in Digimon system though.
Yeah, so paying the cost here is really what's bringing Stitch down. And it's hard. He's still A tier here. But I can't bring myself to bring him below A tier because the effect is just so good in so many different ways. I cannot express to you how good drawing a card after playing a card is. It's quite like Stitch is quite literally playing Digimon in a card. You play a card, you draw a card. And the only issue Stitch has here is that he's going to be played for 4 at the least, and then he swings for 4 as well. So essentially needing to be on 8 mana to play him and swing him. And then not even, I forgot Summoning Sickness. Essentially needing to be on 4 mana to swing with him after the turn he has played is a little bit of an ass, but also you're drawing cards off of him. You're gonna have enough time to figure things out with this card.
Yeah, and then of course exerting in Digimon memory system actually is a bit higher of a cost as well, because you're gonna be playing cards, you're going to topping them, they're going to be open, and you get less of an opportunity to spam in the Digimon memory system, because a lot of times the way the game ebb and flows, the opponent's going to choke you to 1 to 2, and so playing a character with what power tier less Stitch says. Having to play that card is oftentimes you're going to get the opportunity to play maybe one of them, get 1 card worth of value off of it, and then the opponent's off to the races again with their next turn. So just all around less of a great card, but still manages to be one of the best cards within the system.
Yeah, exactly.
By virtue of other cards just being worse still, or other cards being costing too much, but Either way, Stitch is still great. Here's an interesting one. So we have Elsa in B tier. So Elsa's been hovering around this level for a very long time throughout most tier lists, I think, not all of them. A little bit less great in Digimon again because of the way that the game ebb and flows. 3 is a real cost. You're not going to be able to see her pay off until later on. And then of course, Digimon prioritizes playing several lower cost things, and then you can only really freeze one of them if that's what your opponent chooses to do, and then they're still left with the other one. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, so I think the main draw of Elsa, which is two of them actually, which is why she is up here in B, is one the cost that they give back on attack being 1 really does offset the cost of 3, which I think is just enough to not be really cumbersome to you, but also put a decent body on the field. And then as someone who has played Digimon a lot, there is usually a huge emphasis on either curve or dropping big bunguses on the field and hoping your opponent can't answer them. And Elsa
can't do that.
Good. Yeah. And Elsa is very good at helping other cards answer those cards. Like being able, considering that we have to swing into into rested, exerted units, being able to exert them at will with Elsa is very good, especially because you won't be paying mana on it the turn after it's played.
Yeah, so you absolutely bring up a great reason as to why Elsa is great at like all stages in the game. Because like the biggest thing for me, or the biggest draw for Elsa, is like you're gonna kill off that pesky, Captain Hook that was just played before it gets the chance to deal damage to you. But also in terms of like the big Chungus type of creature. Of course, you're gonna need a big Chungus of your own to kill off their big Chungus, but. Just like very versatile card Elsa is. I don't think, regardless of what actually ends up happening in Lorcana, I think Elsa's going to be like playable at worst, a really great card at best. And that's just the general spectrum that I see her being on. I don't ever see her really being a bad card. And that's great because her art is perhaps my favorite.
Fantastic.
All
oh my
of
god,
these.
yeah. Shout out to Nicholas Cole on Twitter.
Yes, perfect. All right, so here's where it's actually pretty interesting. So Maleficent was in D tier in our previous 2, but because of Digimon system, sweet, we don't hate all cards except for Cruella de Vil. She's awful. So Maleficent is really interesting in Digimon. So Digimon has what I like to call a removal problem. A lot of times you're paying high cost to kill the opponent's cards, but you aren't developing a body of your own. And Maleficent within this system aims to fix that, where you kill off the opponent's card and you get your own body, and it's not like Duel Masters where you need to wait 9 turns.
This card in this hypothetical situation, Maleficent might be one of the best answers directly for Hook, being able to answer it on turn, like immediately. But
give your opponent 8.
You're still giving your opponent 8, man. Like that's a testament to how good Hook is the best answer to, is one of the best answers to Hook that would probably be currently available in the first set, would be putting them back at 8 the next turn.
Yeah, I would prefer, maybe you can take one swing from Hook and then Elsa Hook the next turn. There's a lot of different options for that, but our next one's going to be Robin Hood again. Of course, that same cost issue comes into play. And Digimon, if you have a bunch of low cost cards, you're just going to be dumping them out from your hand. So the draw is less likely. Aside from that, I think he has a star problem as well. I'm going to check his stars one more time. Just
Star,
2,
I believe, is 2, yeah.
Yeah, 2's not too bad, but it's really just the high cost without really getting the draw. Like, the main, again, excuse the pun, there's going to be a lot of these. The main draw to play in this card is that you get the draw, and this one is, it's going to be a lot less likely within this framework.
Yeah, a lot of the time in Digimon, it's very, very back and forth type of I leave you at 1, I leave you at 1, I leave you at 1. So a lot of cards are going to be in both players' hands. So finding an opportunity for Robin Hood to actually go off is going to be a little bit iffy, but also it's not as, I don't think it's probably going to be as important to draw the cards. So that's why we have this here. Instead of Mickey here, which we do have
is real bad. It's
yeah.
real bad.
Yeah. Go ahead there.
He has 4 stars printed on him. And again, like I said, we preface this entire thing by saying this is not going to happen. But if it's true that you're paying 8 to then give your opponent 4 again, geez, that is a 12 memory investment.
That's higher than Maleficent, right?
Yes, yeah, in total, yep. Higher than Maleficent, which is just so crazy to me that, like, yeah, again, this system's not going to happen. This is just our crazy thought experiment, but Mickey is real bad. In fact, I might even be inclined to put Mickey in D tier, like, super bad card, but still has that application of, like, oh, you play him, he's probably going to win you the game the next turn. just
Yeah,
because you
exactly.
whittle down your opponent with hook or any other card that you have in your deck.
Yeah, Mickey would essentially be a must-answer card, but they could just immediately answer it with Maleficent and feel pretty well about themselves.
Cruella de Vil, unfortunately, gets the short end of the stick on all of these. I feel like we're missing something. Like,
we have to be.
If you know of something that might be interesting for Cruella, please let us know.
Please let me know, because I really want this card to be not this.
Yes. I feel like if we repeat our points for Cruella, we'll just be sounding like a broken record. But yeah, Twitter and comment section in the description. Just please let us know if there's something that you feel like we're missing. But aside from that, this concludes our very long debut video for Traverse Tavern. Thanks for sticking with us this long if you're still here, even through the thick and less thick with this weird Digimon system. Thanks for watching, and thanks for giving our videos a shot and learn a little bit about various trading card games with us as we look at them through the lens of the Lorcana D23 promos.
All right. Heading out. This is Illumineer Franz.
And I'm Illumineer Greg, and this has been the Traverse Tavern. See you later.